Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I'm going to show you how to make this fun card using a technique where we paint with glitter. I showed how I stored my glitter a couple days ago, and I mentioned glitter painting, and then somebody asked, what is glitter painting? Can you show me? And then my friend Jenny over at Craft Test Dummies actually posted a video that was very similar to the glitter painting technique, and I will link up her tutorial in the video description so you can check that out. And I'm going to show you how to do it with a stencil very simply in today's card. This video is brought to you by Rubber Stamp Tapestry. You can find them at pegstamps.com, and we're going to be using some of their tiny little seashell stamps for this project. They have a bunch of different options, so you can have a look. I will link up to these sets, and you certainly don't need them all, but you can look and see what seashells you like the best if you're looking to pick something up like that, because it's really fun for adding little accents on nautical cards, especially if you have some larger nautical elements like these stencils or other larger nautical stamps. You might just want to add a little bit of flair to, good in like your planners, bullet journals, in on like scrapbook pages for embellishments. You could even stamp on like large brads into clay, things like that to make your own embellishments. But I thought this was such a fun card and such a fun idea that I would share it with you today. So the first thing you're going to need to do is find a stencil. I recommend a brass stencil just because it's a little more durable than a plastic stencil. You are going to need a piece of white cardstock. It can be a scrap, just a little bit bigger than your stencil. And you're going to need some adhesive sheet. This is from Craft Chameleon. You can use score tape sheets or really wide score tape if you have that. I almost bought some at the stamp show, the 6-inch wide stuff, but I didn't because I still had some sheets at home. So I'm going to use this. And what we're going to do is we're going to stick this down. Now the score tape is a thin sheet of adhesive, and you've got a backing on both sides. So you're going to remove one backing. So you get the sticky stuff exposed. Make sure your paper is clean. Your cardstock is clean, and then just stick that down. And then what I like to do is take a bone folder and burnish it down. That's going to make sure it's stuck really well and there's no air bubbles, and it just makes it's just a good idea to do that. Now on the stencil, this is a Dreamweaver stencil. I tried actually with one of their, ever since I got this jellyfish stencil from Dreamweaver, I thought that would be so pretty with glitter painting technique, but I tried that a couple times and I just could not get the detail. On this first example, I thought, well, maybe I didn't have enough contrast, like everything was the same value pretty much, even though I used blues for the water and pinks and purples for the jellyfish. They were pretty much the same value, meaning how light or dark it was, so it didn't show up. So then I thought, well, I'll use a transparent pink glitter, and then I'll do black on top, but it didn't, my stencil had such fine lines that I don't think it left enough detail there. I even went in with a marker and tidied up some of those lines, but it just wasn't exactly what I wanted. I also did some experimenting with different glitters. At first I used my Arteza glitter for I used my Arteza glitter for both of these, and I used my Arteza glitter for this one, and it wasn't sticking to the sheet as well as like the super fine stuff that I got at the stamp show this year. This is by Stamp On It. I think it's just a little bit finer, so it just adheres a little bit better. So the first thing we need to do is prepare our stencil. So this stencil has some like embossing on the front that just has the writing on it. So I'm going to use that as my front side. And I'm going to rub a little bit of coconut oil on the back side. So I'm just going to take a clean paper towel and dip it into a little coconut oil. You could also use any sort of like waxy, like if you had coconut soap, any sort of like soap or chapstick, something waxy, and just give it a coat. And you're going to do this so it doesn't stick to the adhesive permanently, because if you put that right on your adhesive sheet, you'll never get it off. And same goes with a plastic stencil. You can do this with a plastic stencil, but I do recommend a brass one or a metal one if you have it. Now that I've got a layer of coconut oil in there, not too much, just enough so that it's not going to stick, I'm going to remove the backing paper from my adhesive that's on my cardstock. I like to have my cardstock a little bit bigger than the adhesive so that I can have some place to hold on to. And then I am just going to drop this onto the adhesive. I also have my adhesive about quarter of an inch larger than my stencil. Okay, then I will take a bone folder. I'll actually put, well, I like to kind of tap over the stencil and make sure that it's stuck to the adhesive, because you don't want glitter to get underneath the lines. And then if you want, you can kind of press it down with the backing paper. Save your backing paper because you are going to want this. Okay, you just want to make sure no glitter is going to get under there. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to actually loosen up one of these sheets so that I'll have it for collecting my excess glitter. And I'm going to fold it in half so it'll be ready for me to pour it right back in the jar when I'm done. I'm going to set that there. A lot of times I'll go right over it with my embossing, my bone folder just to make sure it's stuck. And remember, that coconut oil or coconut soap or chapstick or something on the back of that so that you don't stick it down for good. Now I am going to pour a pretty generous amount of glitter on here. I'm also going to do the edges on the outside too, because sometimes that will give you a really nice border like it did on the card that I made. I ended up leaving that extra in there because I thought it was a nice pretty border. So I like to go over the whole thing and then just kind of tap it down, make sure it's really making contact there with the adhesive. Your finger will work pretty well for this. And then a tip I got from Jenny's video that didn't never occur to me before was using a brush to brush off the glitter. I was using my fingers and I think I was removing too much glitter when I was just kind of practicing. So I'm going to use a brush first to sweep it around on my design, make sure it kind of got in every nook and cranny. And you also want to choose, you just make sure you choose a stencil that's got some large open areas and some thick walls in the stencil. Okay, so now I'm just going to brush that off. So the soft brush will just help you get that glitter stuck everywhere. When your fingers are a little bit rougher and they'll sweep it away sometimes, this will just brush off the excess and you're not going to wipe away the stuff you want to keep on there. Okay, now that I've got the excess off, I'm going to set this aside. And I am going to put the excess glitter back in my little glitter container. There's been some talk about glitter being environmentally unfriendly. So, you know, and it's always a good idea to keep your excess glitter and embossing powders anyway, you know, because why waste it, right? But it's even more important, you know, because you don't want it to go where it doesn't belong and get ingested by wildlife. There, we're all doing our best, right? I'm not perfect. I try. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this backing paper here. If I see there might be some like other specks of color glitter on there, I'll wipe it like on my pants, and then I will come back in and I'm just going to press it down, just kind of burnish it down. And by using the backing paper here, it lets me slide right over the stencil without me like snagging my fingers or cutting myself if your stencil's sharp. And then what I like to do, because I know my adhesive is a little heat activated, is I will heat it from the back, not from the front, because I don't want to scorch my glitter, but I'll heat it from the back. This does two things. For one, it helps activate the adhesive on my adhesive sheet so that it's going to grab the glitter better, and it will also help loosen the adhesive. So it loosens the adhesive so it like will grab onto everything. It'll also loosen up my stencil a little bit so that it will come off a little easier when I remove it in a second. So burnishing the rest of that down. And there we go. Now this isn't really any sort of special glitter. It's not that kind that you can marker, like Copic marker over. I don't have any of that, but I have used some regular glitter for that and it did work all right. So there you can see my Nautilus shell is there just in the clear glitter. And now I'm going to grab some black. And I'm just going to use the black glitter that's here in my Arteza set. I'm going to use this one here because I've used it and I know it works really well. And it's a really fine type of glitter. Again, I'm going to go use my bent paper here. And I'm just going to go ahead and pour a nice, generous coating on here. Make sure it gets in all those crannies that have no glitter in them yet. I like to set this in the box because there's a little slot so it won't tip over. And I'm just going to shake it around there. And again, I'm going to brush the excess off because my fingers might take too much away. You can start to see our design getting revealed. And now I can be a little more aggressive brushing off that excess. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. Again, I'm going to put this back in my glitter pot. So I'm going to show you what I mean about keeping this in my little box here. I think quite a few of you might have ordered this set after I showed it to you the other day. Save the box. It's such a great storage option, and then you're keeping the box out of the landfill. And the other thing I like is that, say I'm messy when I'm putting this back into the container, because you know how like glitter gets, it almost seems like you have more glitter than you started with when you go to try to put it in the container. And some might spill over and you make a mess, but guess what? All of this is just going to end up in the bottom of the box. So I'm not going to have glitter to vacuum all over my craft room. And that's nice. It keeps it contained a little bit. So that might help if you have, you know, issues with glitter being really messy. Okay, so now I'm again going to take the backing paper, and you know what? I'm going to heat the back, help that adhesive be extra activated. You might not need to do that with the glitter that you have and the adhesive that you have, but I find with this adhesive it really helps to heat activate it. And then I'm just going to rub over it with my backing paper because it's a little sandpapery. I don't want to do it with my fingers because this is a little rough. It's not that super smooth stuff. And then if you feel like it needs a little more glitter, you can go ahead and sprinkle some more on, but let me see. I'm wondering if I might use, no, it's about how the other one is. And if you want to do a quick blast, you can do a very, very quick blast on the front. And sometimes that helps brighten up your colors for some reason. I'm not sure because it's not an embossing powder, but it does seem to brighten stuff up a little bit. All right. Now I'm going to go trim this on my paper cutter and I'll be right back. Now we're going to make some of our background elements. So you can see we've got a piece of scrapbook paper, then I've got some stamped paper here. We're going to make the stamped paper now. I'm going to start off with some antique linen distress oxide, and I'm going to do a direct to paper inking, which means I take the ink pad and I just rub it on the paper. Just go up a little bit further than you want your paper to be. Then I am going to grab a darker color. I'm going to use Vintage Photo, and I'm going to use an ink blending brush, but this time I'm going to ink it up by pouncing, and then I'm going to pounce it on my paper. I want this to look kind of like sand, so I want that texture. Alright, then I'm going to do some stamping. I'm going to stamp with my Distress Oxide inks, and I am going to, I'm going to stamp right on this kind of wet ink here because I don't want this stuff to be super bright. I'm going to do some coral using Abandoned Coral ink. Just basically making a pattern. I want to kind of think of maybe like stuff being washed up onto the shore by the sea, by the waves. So everything would just kind of be tumbling. So that's what I'm going for here. And then I want to do some green seaweed here. Where'd my seaweed stamp go? Right here. And things like these things mellow as they dry. So don't worry if it looks really bright. I know it can be a little, kind of a little freaky, but it'll mellow out. Do a few shells. I like to do things a couple times. You can always stamp more in though. Maybe do that one a little bit small. Maybe do this little small oyster shell a few times. Okay, maybe do some blue shells. We'll get some ocean color in there with Salty Ocean. Do that one maybe. It doesn't really matter. I'm like, got a little on the edge because I didn't trim that one yet. Have fun with it. It really doesn't matter. Use whatever seashell stamps you have and they're going to look nice. And then, let's see, maybe this big shell. Maybe I'll do that one. I'll do that one in purple. I like the oyster shells in purple. Do that maybe twice. Alright, so now I'm going to quickly dry this so I can do a kind of a little water speckly technique here. Okay, that's dry. I'm simply going to dip a toothbrush into my water bucket and just give it a couple little spritzes of water. Let it sit for a second. You can even pick up your work area while you're letting that sit. And then I'm going to grab a paper towel and just blot it. And so I've got some just really subtle like water splashes, which just kind of helps you subconsciously get that kind of watery look. If the colors seem too dark to you or too bold, you can go in with a like a gray colored pencil and you can tone down some of them, just kind of lightly color over with gray, or you could use a white. But gray is kind of nice. You're not going to have something that's going to steal the show away from that white glitter that you have. So whatever you do to this part, it's more just to kind of enhance the whole design, not really compete. Now I'm going to take a brighter red, and I have candied apple. And I'm going to use a little crab stamp to stamp a couple little crabs in here. I think something like that just gives life to a scene, and it can just kind of give you a little bit of humor as well, because it's kind of cute. And I'm going to go ahead and dry that really well. Okay, I tidied up a little bit too. The next thing we're going to do is take this paper that's nice and dry, and we are going to tear it. So I'm going to tear the part that I stamped away from me, and that's going to give me that pretty deckled edge on my cream cardstock there. And I just want to make sure that I have everything is stamped where I'm tearing, so I will have that reveal. Now I have a cream card base. This is a A2 size card, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I've got a panel that's 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm just kind of figuring out how I want that to go. So before I adhere that down to the card, I want to get this kind of tacked down, because I'm going to use brads, but I don't want the brads to poke through to the center of the card this time. If I intend to use brads, I will try to have them hidden, have the backs hidden. Actually, eyelets, not brads. So I've got this adhered to here. Nothing's adhered to that yet. And I'm going to use my crocodile to adhere a couple large star brads. They're kind of, I thought they'd be fun to use because, you know, stars, starfish, that sort of thing. We went to the Huntsville Aquarium in St. Andrews, New Brunswick last weekend, and there was a starfish touch tank, and it was really cool. I really recommend the handheld crocodile. I have the Big Bite as well, which is a long reach one, which is really good for scrapbookers if you want to set eyelets in the middle of a page. But I have to say that I hardly ever use that one. I use this one way more because it's easier. Like, you get better leverage with this. And for card making, I really find that it's probably going to do everything you need it to do. So if you're trying to decide between the two, I highly recommend the smaller one. Of course, you know, works just as well as the cheaper ones that you have to bang with a hammer, but you're not going to wake up the rest of your family if you like to craft at night after everyone's gone to bed. Alright, I am going to adhere this down. Oops, actually, whoa. Hold the phone, hold your horses, Lindsay. No, I'm not ready to do that yet. I want to put some twine going between my eyelets first, and I'm going to set that on this foam mat. I don't think it will adhere to that very well. Where is the end? The end, my friend, of the twine. Here we go. And I'm going to wrap this around a couple times and tie a little knot, because why not tie a knot? And there we go. Now, let's see. I think I will have the knot over here like I did on my sample card. I'm going to trim it, get it off the card, and poke that through the other hole. I know a few people have commented lately that they prefer it when I do my card making videos where I'm just kind of like talking as I go instead of voicing it over after the fact. And so I did plan a card beforehand and make sure I knew what I was doing so I could do that today. Sometimes I don't have time to, or the card is too complex, there's too many steps, and it would just make for such a really long video. But I am listening, guys. I do take your criticisms to heart. Sometimes too much. I cry a lot. Just kidding. There we go. We're going to stick that down now, and we're going to adhere our lovely shimmery blingy piece. Isn't that pretty? I can't, yeah, I'm always getting glare except when I actually want to catch the light, show you something shiny. Give that some good adhesive there. Isn't that funny? I'm usually like trying to avoid the glare, and now that, you know, now I can't get it to show the shininess. Oh, I tore this one actually. Let me see if I can tear a little bit more away, because the other one is lower, and I liked having that like that a little bit better. I did not plan that as well. There we go. And I'm going to scoot that one over this way a little bit. I'm going to use some thick marrying glue here, Helmar 450, and I'm going to glue down this little lighthouse. I love these little wooden charms. Actually, gosh, you know what? I'm thinking I wonder if I can glue that over the string or if the string will be too thick. I think I can if I put something on it to weight it down while it's gluing. I think I can do that. So I'm gonna have to just put something like an acrylic stamping block on there when I set it to dry, and then I think I'll use the word discover and put it down here because I don't have the same spatial area left as I did on the other card. And here's a little tip: if you've got this glue and you got one more thing to glue, close the glue bottle up first, because you're going to end up with a little dab on the top of the bottle. So close it up before you've glued your last thing down, and then you'll have just enough glue for like a button. So so keep that in mind if you have that. So there's that. Like I said, I've got to put an acrylic block on there to let it dry, but I'll show you the sample one again. And I clustered my elements over here a little bit more, just because it's how the tear worked out. The tear's a little organic and natural, and you might not be able to predict exactly how it's going to go, but I think both look pretty fun, and I hope you give it a try. It's a lot of fun. Grab that glitter, put it to use, and make yourself a pretty card that you can send to a friend. Again, I'm going to link up my friend Jenny's video in the video description because she has some other ideas on how to use this technique, and it was a really well done video. And I want to thank you for watching. If you want to find the stamps I used, you can find them at our sponsor, Rubber Stamp Tapestry. You can find them at pegstamps.com, and all the supplies I used will be linked in the video description as always. Thanks so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up before you go. Subscribe if you want to find new videos. And until next time, happy crafting.